The candlelight fractured through the bowl of the wineglass as Marcus Ashford lifted it toward his lips. He stopped halfway when he noticed the young waitress standing motionless beside his table, tray balanced in a shaking hand. Her eyes were unfocused, fixed somewhere past his shoulder, or on nothing at all. All around them, Bellevue's most exclusive restaurant murmured with low conversations and the discreet clink of cutlery, but for a moment the world narrowed to just the two of them. "Is something wrong?" Marcus asked, his deep voice cutting through her trance. She jolted as if yanked from sleep. Her name tag read Claire Bennett. "I am sorry, sir," she stammered. "I'll be right back with your entree." Before he could respond, she pivoted and walked quickly toward the kitchen, her movements stiff and unnatural. Marcus frowned and set the untouched Bordeaux back on the table. At 42, he'd built Ashford Industries from a minor consulting outfit into a billion-dollar tech empire. People were his stock in trade. He could read them with unnerving accuracy. Something about Claire's behavior scraped across his instincts like a warning, though he couldn't yet say why. The restaurant was flawless as always, soft jazz drifting from hidden speakers, the rich sense of truffle and aged wine, tables spaced generously for privacy. Marcus had chosen Bellevue for a meeting with his longtime business partner, Richard Caldwell, to finalize terms of a merger with a European conglomerate. Richard had stepped away 10 minutes earlier to take a call from his daughter at college, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and the untouched glass. Claire returned a few minutes later. Her posture was composed now, but the intensity in her gaze remained. She approached with a fresh bottle of wine and a clean glass. "Sir, I'm terribly sorry," she said, voice steadier but edged with urgency. "There was a mix-up in the wine cellar. This is the vintage you actually ordered, the 2015 Chateau Margaux. May I replace your glass?" Marcus studied her. Late 20s, he guessed. Auburn hair pulled into a neat bun. Intelligent green eyes that now held some plea he couldn't interpret. The dim lighting carved shadows across her face, obscuring her expression. "A mix-up," he said. "The wine I have is perfectly fine. Please." One word, but there was desperation in it that made his instincts flare. "Allow me to pour from the correct bottle. The manager would be mortified if he knew we'd served you the wrong year." Something in her urgency made him nod. "Very well." She moved with practiced efficiency. She removed his brimming glass and set it on her tray, uncorked the new bottle, poured a fresh serving into a clean glass, and placed it in front of him. This time he noticed her hands no longer shook. "Thank you for your understanding, Mr. Ashford," she said softly. It didn't surprise him that she knew his name. He was a regular here, and his face had been on enough magazine covers that most of Seattle's upper tier recognized him. As she lifted the tray with the original glass, their eyes met. For a heartbeat, something unspoken passed between them. A warning, a secret, and beneath it all fear mixed with resolve. Then she turned and disappeared through the kitchen doors. Marcus leaned back, the new wine sitting untouched. His meal, his meeting, his carefully structured evening faded to background noise. His mind worked through possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. Had there been something wrong with the first glass? Had Claire seen something he'd missed? Richard returned, slightly flushed from his call. "Sorry about that, Marcus. My daughter's having trouble at college again. You know how it is." He slid into his seat and reached for his own glass, taking a generous swallow. "So," Richard said, setting the glass down, "where were we?" "Ah, right, the merger terms." Marcus only half heard him. His gaze kept sliding past Richard, to the kitchen doors, waiting for Claire to reappear. When she finally did, 15 minutes later, she moved from table to table with the efficiency of habit, never once looking his way. The night wore on. Richard talked projections and overseas markets. Marcus nodded in the right places, but his thoughts stayed anchored to that switched glass and the strange fear in a waitress's eyes. When Richard excused himself to the restroom, Marcus made up his mind. He caught Claire's gaze and signaled her over. "Yes, Mr. Ashford?" she asked. Her tone was professionally neutral now. "What was in that first glass?" Marcus asked quietly. Color drained from her face. "I don't know what you... Don't insult my intelligence." He cut in, not unkindly but firmly. "You switched my wine for a reason. What did you see?" She glanced around to make sure no staff were close enough to overhear, then leaned in slightly. "I can't talk about this here," she whispered. "But please, Mr. Ashford, whatever you do, don't drink anything you haven't watched being poured from a sealed bottle." She hesitated, then added in an even lower voice, "And be careful who you trust." Before he could press her, she was gone, summoned to another table. Marcus's heartbeat hammered in his chest. Be careful who you trust. The warning repeated in his mind as Richard returned, settling into his chair with his usual easy smile. "Everything all right?" Richard asked, catching the distant look in Marcus's eyes. "Fine," Marcus said automatically, but it was a lie. He looked at his partner, his closest friend for 15 years. The man who had stood beside him through lean years and explosive growth, who had toasted with him just an hour earlier. Richard's own glass now sat empty, its contents long since drained. Between them, the thick binder of merger documents waited for Marcus's signature. The agreement would place 49% of Ashford Industries into a joint venture with Richard's European connections. Marcus had been prepared to sign without hesitation. Now a thin creeping fog of doubt seeped into the room. "Tell me again about the European investors," Marcus said slowly. "Who exactly are they?" Richard's smile flickered for the briefest instant before settling back into place. "We've been through this, Marcus. The Steinberg Group. Excellent reputation, proven track record. And you vetted them personally?" "Of course," Richard said, a trace of offense in his voice. "We've been working on this for months." "What's with the sudden cold feet?" Marcus didn't answer. As Claire passed by again, carefully not looking at him, her studied avoidance felt like confirmation. Something was very wrong. And a poor waitress who had silently switched his glass might have just saved his life. The question was, from what and how far did it reach? The next morning, Marcus rode the private elevator to the 42nd floor of Ashford Tower with a throbbing headache and barely any sleep. He'd left Bellevue the night before without signing, citing a need to review the final details. Richard had been visibly irritated beneath his mask of understanding. Now, sitting behind his mahogany desk with Seattle sprawled beneath his office windows, Marcus couldn't shake the image of Claire's terrified eyes and shaking hands. He had built his empire on instinct as much as strategy. Every instinct he possessed screamed that Claire had interrupted something catastrophic. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Ashford, your 10 o'clock is here," came Jennifer's efficient voice. "Also, there's someone in the lobby asking to see you. Claire Bennett. No appointment. She says it's urgent." Marcus straightened. "Send her up immediately."
"Cancel me 10 o'clock.
"But sir, it's..." "Cancel it, Jennifer." 10 minutes later, Claire sat across from him, looking very different from the immaculate waitress of the night before. She wore jeans and a plain sweater, her auburn hair loose around her shoulders. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. "Thank you for seeing me," she began, voice tight with nerves. "I know it's inappropriate to show up at your office, but I couldn't. I had to warn you properly." "Sit," Marcus said, gesturing to the leather chair. "Tell me everything." She perched on the edge, fingers twisting together in her lap. "Last night," she said, "I saw someone put something in your wine." Marcus felt every muscle in his body go still. "I was taking water to the table next to yours," she continued, "when I noticed a man standing near your table while you and your friend were looking at your menus. He took a small vial from his pocket and poured it into your glass. It happened so fast, 3 seconds maybe, then he walked away toward the bar." "Describe him," Marcus said. "Taller than you, maybe 6 feet. Dark hair. Gray suit. I didn't see his face clearly. The lighting is dim in that section. But I saw what he did, Mr. Ashford. I'm certain of it." "And you didn't call the police? Or the manager?" Guilt twisted her expression. "I panicked. I'm an immigrant. I came here from Ireland 3 years ago on a work visa. It expired 6 months ago." Her voice broke. "The restaurant pays me under the table. If the police got involved, they'd look into everything. I'd be deported. My mother back home is sick. She depends on the money I send." She leaned forward, pleading. "I couldn't risk it. But I couldn't let you drink it either. So I did the only thing I could think of. I switched your glass, said it was the wrong wine, and took the original to the kitchen. I poured it down the sink. She swallowed hard. I know I should have done more. But I was terrified. Marcus watched her closely. Her accent thickened with emotion, and the remorse in her eyes looked raw and unfeigned. Everything about her screamed honesty. He'd still been wrong about people before. "Why come to me now?" he asked. "Because I couldn't sleep," Claire said simply. "Because whoever did that might try again. What if I'm not there next time? I realize someone wants to hurt you badly enough to poison you in public. You need to know that. You need to protect yourself." Marcus walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out over the city. "This man," he said quietly, "could he have been wearing a silver Rolex with a blue face?" Behind him, Claire sucked in a breath. "Yes. I noticed it because the watch caught the light when he reached for your glass." "How did you?" "My business partner wears that exact watch," Marcus said. "I gave it to him 5 years ago to thank him for his loyalty." The silence that followed felt cavernous. "Mr. Ashford, I don't want to cause trouble between you and your colleagues," Claire said at last, voice faint. "Maybe I was wrong about the watch. The light." "You weren't wrong," Marcus said, turning back to her. "Every instinct I have says you weren't." He sat, pulled his keyboard closer and began typing. "Richard Caldwell," he said. "My partner for 15 years. The man pushing this merger that hands control of almost half my company to his European friends." He looked up at her. "Tell me, Claire, what happens if I die before signing the merger papers?" "I don't understand business," she admitted. "Not like that. My will," Marcus said, a bitter edge entering his voice, "states that if I die, Richard becomes interim CEO of Ashford Industries. The board would likely confirm him within months. If the merger goes through first, his partners in Europe get their 49%, and Richard gets his cut, about $200 million to start." He leaned back. "But if I die before signing, Richard inherits control of the entire company. Rough value $4 billion. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God." "So the question," Marcus said quietly, "is whether Richard gets more from the merger, or from my death. And whether he's decided the answer is death." They sat in heavy silence for several moments. "What are you going to do?" Claire asked finally. Marcus picked up his phone. "First, I'm going to hire you properly. You need a legal work visa. Your mother needs care. And I need someone I can trust." Her eyes widened. "Mr. Ashford, I can't. You saved my life," he said simply. "Let me help fix yours." Tears glistened in her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes. Then help me figure out if my best friend is trying to kill me." Over the next 2 hours, they assembled a picture Marcus hadn't wanted to see. He pulled financial records, email chains, and meeting notes from the last 6 months. Patterns emerged he'd been too trusting to notice. Richard had driven the merger with unusual urgency, sweeping aside Marcus's occasional doubts with smooth reassurance. The Steinberg Group, the supposed European partner, was entirely Richard's find. He'd arranged every introduction. Marcus had only ever met them on video calls, with Richard always present, always steering the conversation. "Look at this," Marcus murmured, pointing to the screen. 3 weeks ago, Richard increased my life insurance as part of a routine corporate review. The company is the beneficiary, so whoever controls the company controls the payout. 50 million. Claire leaned closer. "And this email, he's asking about your medical history. Says it's for the insurance documentation, but the questions are very specific," Marcus finished grimly. "Allergies, medications, pre-existing conditions. The kind of details someone might want if they were trying to pick the safest way to kill me without immediate suspicion." The desk phone rang, making both of them jump. Marcus hit the speaker. "Mr. Ashford," Jennifer said. "Mr. Caldwell is here. He says it's urgent, about the merger papers. Should I send him in?" Marcus and Claire locked eyes. "Tell him I'm in a meeting," Marcus said. "I'll call him later." After the line clicked off, Claire went to the window, hugging herself. "This is insane," she whispered. "Things like this don't really happen, do they? Business partners don't actually kill each other over $4 billion. Marcus asked darkly. People have killed for far less. His phone buzzed with a text from Richard. * we need to talk today. Steinberg Group is getting impatient. Don't throw away 15 years over cold feet. * he's pressuring me, Marcus said, showing the message to Claire. That's not like him. Richard's usually patient. Strategic. This desperation is new. What if he recognized me from the restaurant? Claire blurted. What if he knows I saw something? What if I'm in danger too? The possibility chilled Marcus. If Richard had seen her intervene, she'd be a liability. You're staying close to me, he decided. I'll have security assigned to you. And we're going to get proof, real proof, of what Richard's done. Then we stop him. How? She asked. By giving him exactly what he wants, Marcus said. I'm going to call and tell him I'm ready to sign. Tomorrow night. Private dinner. Just the two of us. He met her eyes. And this time we'll be watching. That's incredibly dangerous, Claire said. Yes, Marcus agreed. But it's the only way to catch him in the act. He held her gaze. Are you with me? She drew a long breath. Fear flickered in her eyes, then hardened into something else, resolve. I'm with you, she said. Let's catch this bastard. The next evening, storm clouds massed over Seattle, heavy with unspent rain. Marcus had spent the day setting his pieces in place. That morning he'd called Richard, apologetic and warm, blaming stress for his hesitation and saying he was ready to move forward. Richard's relief had been palpable. He'd suggested they celebrate with dinner at Bellevue, the same restaurant where it had all begun. Now in his penthouse, Marcus adjusted his tie before the mirror while Claire paced the living room in a simple black dress. He'd insisted she be there, seated at a nearby table as his date, arriving separately. His head of security, Thomas Wright, a former detective, had been fully briefed. He would be stationed at the bar with a clear line of sight to Marcus's table. The recorder's in your watch, Thomas reminded him, nodding toward the sleek timepiece on Marcus's wrist. It'll pick up audio within 15 feet. I'll be watching the whole time, and Claire will be 3 tables away. If anything feels off, we abort. Marcus's jaw was tight. And the restaurant manager? Cooperative, Thomas said. He's horrified something like this might have happened in his place. He gave us the security footage from 2 nights ago. We've been going through it. Claire stopped pacing. Did you find the man I described? Thomas's expression darkened. We found someone who fits. At 8:47 p.m., he approaches your table while you and Mr. Caldwell are both looking at menus. His back is to the camera, but his build and suit match what you said. He reaches toward the table, then walks to the bar and leaves through the side door 3 minutes later. Can you ID him? Marcus asked. Not from the footage. His face never shows. But here's the important part. He arrives at 8:30. 17 minutes before you and Caldwell. He waits at the bar watching the entrance. When you're seated, he waits exactly 10 minutes, then moves in. So he was waiting for us, Marcus said. This wasn't random. It appears planned, Thomas agreed. And there's more. I ran the Steinberg Group. He shook his head. They exist, but they're a shell in Luxembourg. Real owners buried under layers of offshore entities. My gut says the merger's a fraud front to siphon money. Claire inhaled sharply. So Richard wasn't just trying to kill you. He was trying to rob you too. Potentially both, Thomas said. Get you to sign away 49% to a fake company, then remove you so your loyal partner inherits the remaining 51. The shell company's owners vanish with their cut, and Richard ends up with the rest. Marcus stared out at the city lights below his penthouse windows. 15 years, he said quietly. We built this together. I trusted him like a brother. He shook his head. Why wasn't it enough? Greed rarely is, Thomas said. 4 billion beats 400 million. Claire moved closer. Are you sure you want to go through with tonight? We have enough to be suspicious. Enough to protect yourself. You could confront him. End the partnership. And he walks away, Marcus said. Maybe he tries again in 6 months. Or hurts someone else. No. I need the truth. And I need evidence that holds up in court. An hour later, Marcus sat across from Richard at the same table as before. Richard looked relaxed, almost glowing. He lifted a glass of champagne. To partnership, he said. To 15 years of success, and many more to come. Marcus tapped his glass against Richard's but only wet his lips. I'm pacing myself, he said lightly. Want a clear head for the final review? Of course, Richard said smoothly. He had a leather briefcase on the empty chair beside him. Everything's ready. Once you sign, we file first thing tomorrow. The Steinberg Group is thrilled. They've already wired the first installment into escrow. Have they? Marcus kept his tone neutral, though his heart thudded. Generous of them. Paying before the deal is sealed. It's standard in Europe, Richard replied easily. Signals good faith. Marcus, I know you've had doubts, but this merger is the best path for Ashford Industries. We'll break into markets we can't touch alone. Your vision goes global. 3 tables away, Claire followed every nuance, appearing to dine alone. At the bar, Thomas hunched over his phone, the picture of a man absorbed in sports scores, but his attention never left Marcus's table. A different waitress tonight, Amy, served their appetizers. Marcus watched Richard's hands, his glass his own. Richard made no move toward tampering with anything. They discussed strategy over the first course. Richard painted an enticing picture of their international future. Marcus asked questions, appearing engaged, always watching, always waiting. The opening came during the main course. Richard excused himself to the restroom, leaving the briefcase by his chair. Marcus's urge to flip it open nearly overwhelmed him, but Thomas's warning about the restaurant's cameras echoed in his mind. Anything suspicious on footage could jeopardize their case. Richard returned a few minutes later, visibly tense. Klaus Steinberg just called, he said, retaking his seat. He wants confirmation we're signing tonight. He's insistent. That seems unusual, Marcus said. Why the rush? Market timing, Richard answered quickly. There's a window for acquisitions they want to make with our combined capital. Marcus, you have to trust me. I vetted everything. This is legitimate. Marcus studied him. We've weathered a lot together, he said quietly. You'd tell me if something were wrong, wouldn't you? If there were anything I should know about this deal. For an instant, something flickered over Richard's features, guilt or fear, but it vanished almost before Marcus could register it. Of course I would, Richard said. You're my best friend. I'd never do anything to hurt you. Or the company. Never, Marcus pressed softly. Richard held his gaze. Never. The lie settled between them like poison. Something inside Marcus finally broke. The last fragile hope that he'd somehow misread all of this. I need some air, he said abruptly, standing. Give me 10 minutes. It's a big decision. He stepped away toward the outdoor patio. Thomas followed at a distance, then joined him outside, where the hum of traffic muffled their voices. He's lying, Marcus said flatly. Everything in his body language. The way he rushed that last answer. I know, Thomas said. But we still can't prove he tried to poison you. The guy from the footage could be any hired gun working for anyone. We need Caldwell to move tonight. What if I tell him I'm not signing? Marcus said. That I want to dig deeper into Steinberg's credentials. He might panic. Or he might just delay, Thomas countered. Change tactics. Disappear. We lose the chance to nail him. Marcus looked through the glass at Richard, hunched over his phone at the table. No, Marcus said. I think signing is what triggers whatever comes next. That's too dangerous, Thomas said. If he's planning another attempt, you'll be watching, Marcus said quietly. Claire will be watching. And this time we won't miss it. He pulled his arm from Thomas's grip. Trust me. This is the only way. Back at the table, Marcus returned with a new air of decisiveness. All right, Richard, he said. Let's do it. Show me where to sign. Relief and triumph surged into Richard's face. You won't regret this, he said. I promise. He opened the briefcase and spread the papers across the table. Here, here, and initial there. As Marcus bent over the documents, pen in hand, he caught Richard's reflection in a gleaming wineglass. The expression there wasn't relief. It was cold, calculating triumph. Marcus's signature slid across the pages, legally transferring 49% of his life's work to a shell corporation fronting for criminals, with his would-be murderer as their partner. "Excellent," Richard said, his excitement barely contained. "I'll file these first thing tomorrow. Let's celebrate properly." He flagged the waitress and ordered a bottle of Dom Perignon. When it arrived, Richard insisted on pouring both glasses himself, playing the gracious host. Marcus watched every motion. He saw nothing overt. They raised their glasses. "To the future," Richard said, eyes shining. "To the truth," Marcus answered quietly, taking a small sip. The champagne tasted exquisite and harmless. As the evening went on, Richard grew more relaxed, almost giddy. He reminisced about their early years, about all they'd overcome. To anyone watching, they would have looked like two old friends enjoying a shared victory. But Marcus saw the strain underneath. The quick glances toward the entrance. The way Richard checked his watch. The constant attention to his phone. He was waiting. At 10:15, Richard's phone buzzed. He read the message, and his demeanor shifted instantly. "Marcus, I hate to cut this short," he said, standing. "I've got an early meeting. Let's call it a night." "Of course," Marcus said, signaling for the check. They waited together at the valet stand in the cool air outside. Richard fidgeted, distracted. His Mercedes arrived first. He took Marcus's hand in a warm grip. "Thank you for trusting me," he said. "You made the right choice." Marcus watched the taillights disappear into traffic. Thomas appeared at his side. "He's rattled," Thomas said. "That last call, we're tracing it, but I'd bet money it was from whoever he's working with." Claire approached, face tight with anxiety. "What now?" "Now we wait," Marcus said. "If Richard believes everything's on track, he'll move to whatever's next. And when he does, we'll be ready." Across the street, in the shadowed interior of a parked sedan, a third man watched them as intently as they watched Richard's departing car. On his phone, a text from Richard glowed on the screen. Asterisk, he signed. "Move to phase 2. Asterisk, 3 days crawled by like years. Marcus kept his public schedule, attending meetings and signing documents with the calm efficiency expected of him, but every hour felt like walking an invisible ledge. Thomas had placed a discreet but constant security detail around him. At Marcus's insistence, Claire moved into the guest suite of his penthouse for her own safety. On the fourth morning, everything detonated. Marcus was reviewing quarterly reports when Jennifer burst into his office without knocking, face chalk white. "Mr. Ashford, turn on Channel 7. Now." He grabbed the remote. The headline that filled the screen punched the air from his lungs. "Ashford Industries CEO under investigation for fraud." The anchor's voice carried through the room. Sources close to the investigation allege that CEO Marcus Ashford has diverted company funds to offshore accounts, potentially defrauding investors of hundreds of millions of dollars. Federal authorities are expected to file charges within days. "It's a lie," Jennifer whispered. "Sir, you would never." "Of course it's a lie," Marcus said, his mind racing. "The question is, who built it?" His phone rang. Richard's name flashed on the display. "Have you seen the news?" Richard's voice oozed concern. "This is insane. I've already called our lawyers. We'll fight this together." "Will we?" Marcus asked, his tone gone cold. A pause. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Where are you right now, Richard?" "At my office." "Why?" "Stay there." "I'm coming. We need to talk privately." Marcus hung up as Thomas stepped into the office, having heard enough of the broadcast from the hall. "It started," Marcus said. "He's framing me. The shell companies, the offshore accounts, he's dumping it all on me. So he doesn't need to kill you anymore," Thomas said grimly. "He can destroy your reputation, push you out, maybe get you jailed. The board has no choice but to remove you." "And who do they turn to?" Claire asked from the doorway, pale but steady. "Richard." Marcus nodded. "And once he's CEO, he can cooperate with investigators by managing and burying the very evidence he created." He slammed his fist on the desk. "It's brilliant, actually. If I'm in prison, I can't fight back. He takes everything and does it legally. Cleaner than murder." "So what do we do?" Claire asked. Thomas pulled out his phone. "We use what we've got. Security footage. The recording from Bellevue. Everything we've dug up on the Steinberg group. I've also been tracking Caldwell's calls. He's been using burners. His phone has pinged off 3 different prepaid towers this week. He's talking to someone he doesn't want traced. It's still not enough, Marcus said. Not without something tying him directly to the poisoning or the fraud. All of this is circumstantial. His phone rang again. Unknown number. Mr. Ashford. A woman's crisp voice said when he answered. This is Detective Linda Morrison, Seattle PD Financial Crimes. We need you to come in for questioning regarding allegations of. I'm aware of the story, Marcus cut in. And I assure you, Detective, it's false. But I'll cooperate fully. Give me 2 hours. When he hung up, the 3 of them stood in charged silence. What if we let Richard think his plan worked? Claire said finally. You go to the station, you cooperate. Make it look like you're trapped. Then he might lower his guard, Thomas said, picking up the thought. Celebrate. Talk to his partners. Get sloppy. And while he's doing that, Marcus said, you 2 go after hard evidence. If he believes he's won, he'll stop covering his tracks. He looked at Thomas. If he slips, can you trace those burner communications? If he gets careless, yes, Thomas said. Especially if he's drunk on victory. Then let's give him something to celebrate, Marcus said. 2 hours later, Marcus sat in a gray interrogation room at Seattle PD. His attorney, Patricia Chan, at his side. Across from them sat Detective Morrison and her partner, case files stacked neatly between them. Mr. Ashford, Morrison began. We have records of wire transfers from Ashford Industries accounts to a company called Offshore Holdings in the Cayman Islands. These transfers carry your digital authorization. Can you explain that? Yes, Marcus said calmly. Someone forged my authorization. I never approved those transfers. I am being framed. Your digital signature is unique, Morrison pointed out, and can be copied given enough access and skill, Marcus said. Detective, I am not the criminal here. I'm the target. For 3 hours they questioned him. Marcus answered every query, opened his personal and corporate finances, suggested lines of inquiry the detectives hadn't considered. Patricia intervened when necessary but mostly let him talk. Gradually, Morrison's skepticism thinned. The numbers didn't align the way a straightforward embezzlement should. Too many things pointed toward convenient guilt rather than real misappropriation. Who do you believe is framing you? She asked at last. My business partner, Marcus said. Richard Caldwell. And I can prove it, if I have time. Across the city, while Marcus sat under fluorescent lights, Thomas Wright used a company key to open Richard's office. It was a technical bending of the rules, but Marcus still owned half the company. The office was corporate property, and this was a crisis. Start with anything obvious, Thomas said. Correspondence with Steinberg. Financial files. Anything that ties him to those offshore transfers, or the poisoning. Claire slid into the chair behind Richard's computer. He had never changed the password from the one he and Marcus had shared in the company's early days. Marcus had supplied it without hesitation. Her heart pounded as she navigated through folders. Thomas, she said, voice shaking, look at this. On the screen was an unsent email, left in drafts, dated the day after the incident at Bellevue. Subject: Problem with W. Asterisk Phase 1 failed. Subject became suspicious. Implementing Phase 2. Financial destruction. Ensure all evidence points to MA. Timeline, 1 week max asterisk. W must be the man who dosed the wine, Thomas said, snapping photos of the screen.
Marcus Ashford.
This is exactly what we needed. They kept digging. In a locked folder on the computer, they found message threads with a contact tied to the Steinberg Group's hidden owners, laying out the fraud scheme in chilling detail. In a physical file cabinet, they found a handwritten ledger showing payments to someone listed only as W for project elimination. A bottom drawer of Richard's desk was locked. Thomas jimmied it open and froze. Jesus, he murmured. Nested inside was a nearly empty glass vial, the pharmacy label half peeled away, and a scrap of paper in Richard's unmistakable hand. Remaining supply, backup plan if needed. He kept it, Claire whispered. He kept the poison. Thomas bagged both items carefully. Arrogance, he said. He never thought anyone would look. Footsteps sounded in the hallway. Voices approached the door. Thomas grabbed Claire and pulled her behind it just as it swung inward. Richard entered with another man at his side, the man from the security footage. Claire recognized his build instantly and had to clap a hand over her mouth to stifle a sound. The coverage is perfect, Richard was saying as he moved behind his desk. Marcus is at the station right now, probably in cuffs. The board meets tomorrow to discuss removing him. By next week I'll be CEO. You'll get your final payment. And the Irish waitress? The other man asked, his voice flat. She saw me at the restaurant. She can identify me. Claire Bennett, Richard said. I've had someone watching her. She's been at Marcus's penthouse, probably his latest conquest. Once they arrest him, she'll scatter like all the others. She's nobody. Behind the door, Claire's fingers dug into her palms. Nobody. Loose ends make me nervous, the man said. Then tie it up if you must, Richard replied, bored. Just make it look accidental. I don't need more problems. Thomas's hand tightened on Claire's arm, keeping her frozen. They waited, barely breathing, until the two men left the office and their voices faded down the corridor. We've got them, Thomas said at last, stepping out and holding up a small recorder. Every word. An hour later, Marcus sat in Patricia's car outside the police station, finally released pending further investigation, when his phone rang. We have everything, Thomas said, his voice crackling with tension and triumph. Emails. The poison. A recorded confession with his hitman. He's finished. He just left the office. His phone shows he's headed to Bellevue. My guess? He's going to celebrate. Marcus's grip tightened on the phone. Call Detective Morrison. Tell her to meet us there. It's time to end this. Bellevue's bar glowed warm and inviting as ever. Richard sat on a stool, swirling an obscene amount of aged scotch in his glass, eyes on the TV above the bar where Marcus's face and the word fraud still shared the screen. He didn't notice Marcus until the stool beside him creaked. Hello, Richard, Marcus said. Richard's head snapped around. Color drained from his face, then rushed back in an uneasy flush. Marcus, I thought you'd still be at the station. Are you all right? I've been worried sick. Drop the act, Marcus said quietly. I know everything. The poisoning. The fake merger. The fraud. Vous. The shell company behind Steinberg. Your plan to frame me. For a moment Richard just stared. Then he gave a short, bitter laugh. How long? He asked. Since the night Claire switched my wine glass, Marcus said. She saved my life. The life you tried to take. Richard took his time draining the rest of his scotch. You were always too trusting, he said at last. Too comfortable with your billions while I did the heavy lifting. I built those European connections. I negotiated. I took the risks. But it was always Ashford Industries. Your name. Your face. Your glory. So you decided to take it all, Marcus said. I decided to claim what I'd earned, Richard corrected. And I would have, if not for one meddling waitress who happened to look in the right direction at the wrong time. Is that really what you tell yourself? Came Claire's voice from behind them. She stood with Thomas and Detective Morrison, two uniformed officers flanking her. That you deserve to murder your friend, steal his company and destroy his life? Rage twisted Richard's features. You ruined everything. No, Marcus said, standing. You ruined everything when you chose greed over friendship, over decency, over 15 years of trust. Detective Morrison stepped forward, badge visible. Richard Caldwell, she said. You're under arrest for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. The officers took his arms and began reciting his rights. As they cuffed him, Richard looked at Marcus one last time. It should have been mine, he said quietly. All of it. It could have been ours, Marcus replied. That was never enough for you. They led Richard away. The knot that had lived in Marcus's chest for days finally began to loosen. Claire moved to his side. He took her hand. Thank you, he said simply. For everything. She smiled through tears. I'm just glad I was paying attention. 6 months later, The setting sun washed Seattle in molten gold and crimson as Marcus stood on his penthouse balcony. The city stretched out below, alive and humming. Behind him, Claire's laughter floated from the living room as she chatted with her mother in Ireland. Very much alive, her medical bills now paid in full. The legal storm had passed quickly once all the evidence surfaced. Richard had been sentenced to 20 years for attempted murder and fraud. The man he'd hired, William Torres, a former chemist drowning in gambling debt, had turned state's evidence in exchange for a reduced sentence. Ashford Industries had taken a hit in public perception but rebounded stronger. Marcus instituted tighter oversight, diversified leadership, and stepped back slightly from constant, grinding hands-on control. He discovered that life outside boardrooms had value too. Claire had surprised him, and everyone else, with a keen mind for business. She'd started as his assistant, but her questions and insights quickly made it clear she belonged in the strategy room. Now she worked in the company's strategic planning division, taking MBA classes at night on a full scholarship he insisted on funding. Somewhere amid the investigations, fear, and long nights spent poring over evidence together, something else had taken root between them. It wasn't gratitude or proximity. It was quieter, deeper, real. Claire joined him on the balcony, handing him a glass of wine, always opened and poured in front of him, as he now insisted. "My mum sends her love," she said, leaning on the railing beside him. "She wants to know when we're visiting Ireland." "Whenever you're ready," Marcus said, sliding an arm around her waist. "I owe her for raising a remarkable daughter." Claire rested her head against his shoulder. "I still think about that night sometimes," she murmured. "How one tiny choice, to pay attention, to act, changed everything." "You saved more than my life," Marcus said. "You reminded me what matters. What's real?" "And what's that?" she asked, tilting her face up to his. "Trust," Marcus said. "Truth. People willing to do the right thing even when it costs them." She smiled softly. "Getting philosophical in your old age, Mr. Ashford?" "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe I'm just grateful. For you. For second chances. For learning the most valuable things can't be bought or stolen. You have to earn them." As the sun slipped behind the horizon, he kissed her. The taste of wine, of possibility, of something like peace, lingered between them. Behind them, the city lights blinked on one by one. Each window, each street lamp, each neon sign marked a life, a decision, a moment of courage or cowardice rippling outward in ways no one could predict. A young waitress had quietly switched a glass of wine, and in doing so, had changed the course of 2 lives. She had saved a man from death, and in return had been saved herself. Not just from deportation or poverty, but from a life lived in fear and invisibility. Now, in the home they were building together, Marcus and Claire stood on the edge of a future neither had imagined half a year earlier. It wasn't built on billions or market share, but on something rarer: courage, integrity, and a love born in the ashes of betrayal. "To new beginnings," Marcus said, lifting his glass. "To paying attention," Claire replied, clinking hers against his. They drank, and below them the city pulsed on. Full of people making choices, taking chances, and altering destinies with small acts of bravery that would echo for years to come.